established to where it counts for thermostats and lighting and HVAC and pumping from pools to well pumps, etc. And we're starting to see a lot of that AI layer get in there, which allows us to function a heck of a lot better and actually reduce the barrier of entry of cost for customers to be able to actually go in and adopt a battery for emergency purposes or to gamify the grid like Nate does in California. We're starting to see a lot more of the improvement on the AI where it's finally catching up to where we can actually be more efficient with cost and ultimately provide a service for everybody.
All right, we have Everett here. Oh, there we go.
There he is.
Is he in the room?
Guys,
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Just your
My
sideways.
computer.
Just go straight.
You're sideways.
I can see him. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
This is actually the best way to start a podcast. Confuse everybody watching.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you loud and clear. I see your shiny head right on top of the camera too. We lost him.
He dropped off.
Oh.
It's all good.
Joey, you were super blurry.
It looks like that, but it's gonna be super clear on the actual broadcast.
Oh, okay.
We'll be
It's gonna look
anyway.
Sounds good.
It's gonna look too clear. You're like, I wish it was more blurry. You know what I mean? So we're going to
see that new
back in.
fade you got. It's called the moose fade. It's that special hair. You can barely see how. Look at that thing. Woo!
That's not a fade, that's for sure.
And turn the other way to show Everett that you didn't do it on the other side.
So yeah, you got that.
Right.
It's like Two-Face.
All
right, what are we doing? Are we getting Nathan back in here? Or what's he at?
Yeah, said something about his computer, so we'll see what he figures out.
I think we just get started right now and get back in here. So everyone watching, this is the Solar Pulse podcast with Josh and Joe. And this week we wanted to have the battery experts episode. So we thought of the two most popular or the smartest people in the battery area. First one in my mind came to be Everett Brewer with Storz Power, one of the top brains when it comes to smart batteries. So Everett, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, for sure, man. Let's look forward to getting into the details.
Let's have some fun. I mean, then of course, the other guy, if we had a battle of wits of batteries, we always got Nathan Skousen in there. What's up, Nate?
What's going on, guys? Sorry, I came home to my laptop screen here completely shattered.
Oh, no. It looks good from our side, though, at least.
Man, yeah, I was trying to make it back here. I was actually at a battery install, and then my son plays video games on here, and
anyway,
we'll find out what happened with that.
He definitely raged quit. He got killed. He just smashed the screen.
I don't know how to flip my camera around, but
I did.
Oh, damn.
Definitely.
And so now I can't think. I'm trying to connect it to my other screen, but since I can't see what's on this screen to click the buttons to like connect it, anyways, that's what I was trying to figure out. That's why it took me so long. Sorry.
That definitely looked like he got, you got killed in Call of Duty and he grabbed the controller and just...
No, I think something was on it and it, closed the laptop. That's what it looks like. Something was on the keyboard.
Well, I know Everett met Josh before. They know each other. But Nate, I don't think you ever met Josh King before, the founder of Virtual Solar Club in Kinevo.
I have not. How's it going, Josh?
What's going on, Nate? Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I've known Nate for more years probably than anybody else in the solar industry because he lives like an hour from me. It works in the same area. So I've known Nate for many, many years, actually before I even met Trey, his brother, if anybody doesn't know.
Yeah, for living so close. I should be at your house doing this. Then I wouldn't have had this. That would have been a better idea.
Bro, all right. How long is it going to take to get here? Because that sounds like a good plan. But let's get into it really quick. Yo, Nate, just get your screen so we can see your full face, and that's it, and you'll be golden.
Yeah, there we go.
What?
But
just
real
zoom
quick,
in?
yeah, that's perfect. before we get started, I want
All
to
right.
make sure, like, some people don't know you guys' story of how you became the battery experts that you are. So, Everett, real quick, I know that you've had a long history. You don't have to go through the whole thing, but maybe it's a quick background how you got into solar and how you became the battery expert that you are.
Yeah, I mean, that is a long story, but the simple answer of it is that I've always been on the analytics side of energy in general. So, coming from commercial, industrial, utility scale type projects, we've been tackling the utility rates for demand charges and time of use for a very long time. So, when you're sitting down and looking at data all day long, you literally just layer over the performance of sunshine and a battery and how power comes in and out of it, and it just clicks. So it's been giving me a one up to where I've been able to really take a proper approach and really look at the accuracy of it. And then also too is, we're an installation company first and a battery company second. So it allowed me to have a little bit more real world application of what actually happens in the field and turning wrenches. It's not just, engineers sitting behind a computer saying, hey, my computer told me that it's supposed to look like this. And then Nate and I are over there trying to stick two sticks together and trying to figure it out. And, we've seen some of all that in the industry. So, it really just comes to life experience, construction, industrial construction, heavy equipment, and running businesses since I was a kid.
And you're in Utah, right? You've been there your whole life. Arizona too, right? Don't you have a place in Arizona also?
Yeah, Arizona native. Stuck in Utah for the moment. I always keep saying that I'm going to get back to Arizona eventually. So especially right now, it's freezing cold. But yeah, so Arizona native and then been here in and out since 06. So time goes by quick.
Well, we got a bunch of questions we're interested in asking you, so I appreciate you being here. And Nate, I know what you've been doing. Tell everybody else, though, how long you've been doing solar and how you became the battery expert you are. I want to see your full face.
Solar since... it looks like it on my... Is this good?
We can see from like your chin up.
Yeah. There you go.
There you
Boom.
go.
Now it's just your teeth.
Man, I can see it. To me, it looks like it's from my chest up. So this is good.
Mine too. I don't know what they're talking about. It's all good on my screen.
All right, you're
I
golden.
think they're just pulling your leg.
All right. Yeah, they're trying to get my fat head in here. Big old egghead. Yeah, I've been doing it since 2013 or 14. I actually moved from Arizona to New York to sell solar, which is kind of funny. But did that for a long time and then just got into batteries with NEM 2.0. So that's when it clicked for us. Like, wait a second. Why would you give it to the grid when you can store it? Okay, well then how much does it cost to store it? Is that cheaper than the difference in price that they lose by not? And so that's when we started doing it. Just great JLM batteries. It's like Enphase for batteries. They ended up going out though, but that was cool because they lived right or they were out of Rockland. But then getting into backup, Sonnen taught me a lot. But it was really Everett who taught me a ton of stuff that made it like click, like you said. And then once it clicks, and once you kind of, it's like learning math and like, oh, that's how it. And then you can kind of think of, wait, so if we design it like this, then that. So that's who really helped me understand the basics, and then from there just tons of YouTube.
Wow.
You're probably got a text coming in.
Yep, we got your back.
Oh, and then just talking to the different manufacturers, asking them tons and tons and tons of questions, but mostly being in the field. So if you sell, just go stop by, because once you open it up and look at everything and you can physically see wires going together, that's when it can really click of like, that's how it all works. But yeah, just a lot of interest. You got to be interested in it. Otherwise, I can see how it'd be really, really boring. But it's, people can memorize how many yards 18 different players rushed for last year, like
That's
down
true.
to the yard of each one.
Right?
Why? Because they're interested in it. So
Yep.
you can memorize spec sheets and things and how things work. You just got to be interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna let Josh ask a question, but I just had one really quick because you guys are, really experienced and seen the battery technology improve, evolve over the years. Just real quick, Everett, like you've seen the batteries how they were before. What are some like major differences that you see now? That batteries aren't the same what you seen in your grandma's battery, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, there's been massive advancements. I mean, we've been in business over 12 years and seeing even just through our iterations and what some of our competitors have done around that. It's actually the battery technology has not really had massive amount of creation or adjustments in the last probably 5 years. It's really been around the software and how that actually communicates to third-party technologies, like from smart breaker technology to transfer switch capability to communicating with the grid to account for grid services and programs. Um, Being able to maximize that to support the grid in certain situations, like down in Texas, you had an entire node that dropped down, and all of a sudden your batteries become an asset, and they're paying you $7,000 a megawatt hour, and so that's really been the big increase of that. And I mean, the technology platform we're on today wasn't even available 5 years ago, right? And so with just a big advancements on that side, but it's actually been bi-directional. It's just not been the battery companies, but it's actually been the maturity of the utility companies. So we can do handshakes, we can talk together. It's been through the different performance metrics to where we can start seeing history of solar production, so we can get more granular on how a battery can behave. And then also too is that we're starting to get technologies like smart home and how we're starting to manage energy along the way. And it's just one big ecosystem. So that's what I'm actually looking forward to in the future of all this is the software layer of it. Yeah, batteries might change a little bit in size here and there. We've accounted for safety. Lithium iron phosphate, LFP, or LiPo4 is kind of the references there. We're proud to say is we've never blown anybody's house up or caught a fire. Not all manufacturers can say that, but
Yes,
the thing
everybody
is
cheer
that
up, baby. Let's go.
yeah,
No fires.
yeah. But I mean, those have been the bigger leaps and bounds. Is really focusing on safety and creating better certifications and protocols where you create standards that protect the home and protect the people inside of it. So that's one of the things that I've really seen grow.
Everett, I don't want to be that guy, but do you think the advent of AI and AI being applied to, a bunch of different areas in life is going to help that software side of things to make things more efficient?
We're already doing it. So the answer to that is yes. So we're already looking at that as risk mitigation at the hardware level. So we actually physically replace less product in the field because of it. We're starting to be predictive on different things like getting prepared for storms and weather to being involved in anticipation of when the grid may need you as an asset. And then we're starting to see a lot more of the smart home, right? A lot of times batteries were just reactive to energy, right? It's just like, hey, whatever happens in the home happens, and hopefully you can keep up, right? But now we're starting to see layers to where it counts for thermostats and lighting and HVAC and pumping from pools to well pumps, etc. And we're starting to see a lot of that AI layer get in there, which allows us to function a heck of a lot better and actually reduce the barrier of entry of cost for customers to be able to actually go in and adopt a battery for emergency purposes or to gamify the grid like Nate does in California and like we do in Texas and in Arizona. So really, we're starting to see a lot more of the improvement on the AI where it's finally catching up to where we can actually be more efficient with cost and ultimately provide a service for everybody. I feel like everybody should have the right to protect their homes, their families, and have control of their power. Sometimes there's that financial barrier still, and we're trying to constantly drive that down where it just becomes something more of a standard.
You mentioned smart home. I see this being a big trend that not enough people are catching on to, and a lot of solar sales people are still looking at themselves as a solar salesperson. But I feel the next big trend in terms of both sales on the front end and actual customer benefit is that smart home. And stop seeing solar or even just batteries as, oh, it's either solar or solar with batteries, and start seeing it as a I love this full home energy efficiency upgrade. And you mentioned heat pumps, you mentioned AC optimization, you mentioned a few different things. Do you see that trend happening? And like, do you see that do you think in 5 years there's going to be solar salespeople, or is it going to be solar is just one thing on the product list? And if you don't have all these other things, you're not going to be competitive.
Yeah, I'm 100% aligned with you. The trend is definitely going to be around home improvement, if I were to kind of put it on a box. Because the home improvement actually accounts for these 50, 60, 70-year-old homes that are ultimately, out of efficiency standards. They never meet the standards today, from leaky vents. I mean, I even have my own home. My home's not that old, and I had an HVAC contractor come by because the HVAC original one had made a mistake. And through that, he found 18 literal full-on gaps in my ducting, right? And, never would have known that without having an expert come by and do an audit for me, because I was running why my neighbors were running their air conditioners $180 a month and mine was $500 a month, and I got the same house. But yeah, with that approach, I definitely see that it really becomes a building envelope overall solution. And then go ahead and throw EV charging on top of that, which is heavily misunderstood. I'd love to talk on that a little bit today, because, man, that's a massive gap. I mean, that's a massive amount of energy, and what we can do to set better expectations around that. And then what some of the trends are getting involved in there, and how it's an actually combined ecosystem with a home energy storage system. It's not separate. It's not a replacement. But yeah, the AI is what's really going to pull that together. And you've got to really understand this stuff. I mean, California's NEM 3.0 flipped everybody on their head because it was the easy button for the longest time, where it's like, man, savings. And now you actually have to be the subject matter expert and really slow down the cell, really get methodical. Nate's really good at breaking that all down, understanding NEM 3, making sure you're understanding the benefits of energy storage, how to properly size different conditions and environments and behaviors. But not everybody's going to make that a priority, as he stated. I mean, you really have to make that to where, hey, this is a career. All of us go to trade school to learn how to cut hair or freaking be a Ford mechanic. But yet, from solar standpoint, it's like, hey, man, you got a breath and a heartbeat. Let's throw you on the doors, and maybe you'll figure it out. So really looking at best practices is really the next phase of this, and trending the next generation.
I mean, NEM 3.0 just did wonders for higher skilled individuals that actually know what they're doing. And even sales guys that maybe aren't that technical, but didn't just rely on a lower number, right? Because you can no longer go, okay, lower number, sign here. Now you actually have to dig into how this is going to benefit a customer, and maybe go into a bit more than a lower number that's $100, $200 less from day one. I love what NEM 3.0 has done for the solar industry. It's pretty cool.
Well, speaking of NEM 3.0, and since we have Nate, who's been working in NEM 3.0 himself, what are some tips, Nate? Like, what are some things you've seen that now we've had this experience to know what NEM 3 is and how it works with the utilities and get bills back? And like, what's a good understanding for people watching that wants to understand what it takes to actually have a good system under NEM 3.0?
Yeah. So, and to touch kind of like where we think the industry is going.
Yeah.
The good and bad thing about really any industry is it's going to go wherever the sales force pushes those customers to go. If they don't bring up things like smart load control, if they don't bring up like, look, anyone can just do solar, but how about I come in and make your house efficient, make it smart? You can see, what does that dryer pool? When are better times? If people don't push that stuff, the customers aren't going to know about it, and it's not going to go in that direction.
It's so true. Like,
so
really quick,
that's the main focus.
It's not just about home improvement, right? It's about electricity bill improvement, and there's many ways to improve that electricity bill, right?
Exactly. And so if you're only bringing up usage and like, here's the cheap, you're missing out on where this industry could go, because it's really going to go in what the sales reps kind of sell to customers.
Makes sense.
So, but as far as NEM, I think that with 3.0, I think the easiest way to break it down is letting customers know, like, look, obviously with solar, the problem is, how do you get your energy at night? With a 1-to-1 system, you spin the meter backwards, you get those credits. but that's not there anymore. So you have to treat it like the battery is your grid. So the way I think it's best for the customer, and most customers would agree, is kind of build it like an off-grid cabin. Kind of build it to where I am producing all my needs while the sun's out with solar, with more to charge that battery. So the battery can go into the evening with solar and battery, then through the night with battery. And yes, there will be times, a 3-4 day snowstorm or something like that. Yeah, you're going to pull from the grid or whatever. But try to build it as much as you can like you would design a system that didn't have the grid. Um, and everyone always kind of asks, especially companies with big sales teams, well, what's the rule of thumb? And there's so much more to it, because somebody who is going to be consuming all that energy during high production hours needs a completely different system than somebody who's not drawing any energy. So they have a big backfeeding to deal with, and they're going to be actually sending, and you need to be able to capture all of that. That offset's going to look different. And then you got the added problem of, okay, if I design this super specific to this person's needs, what if their shift changes? What if now it's completely designed wrong for what they need? So I kind of that general rule of thumb. What I've kind of found running just various sitting there and just doing random addresses and stuff and random usages, and it's around like 130% offset, because you gotta imagine if it was just as simple as I produce, extra goes into the battery, and in theory, you should only need 100% system. In theory, I can capture that overage, go to the battery. I'm not using more than 10,000 kilowatt hours a year, so why do I need to produce more than 10,000? I should just be able to use it, go on the battery. But usage habits of different months mixed with the weather of different months makes it to where in our climate, you have to oversize it to make up for that winter, to have enough energy to overproduce during those months and to overproduce while you're also drawing some of that PV. So it ends up being around like 130%. With that offset, if again, this is different in the summer because your nighttime usage is completely different in the summer than it is in the winter. There's less hours, but there also tends to be less usage. So again, you kind of making it in general on averages for the year, I would say about like around 70% of their daily average. If you want kind of that best savings for NEM 3.0, they're not worried about backup. They're just worried about that trade. Or you'd probably be better off at like, another way you could look at it is pretty much double the system size. But again, that changes with azimuth and sun, and so there's just so many factors that make every way you try to look at it to make it easy. It's like, well, then you can't do that because what if it faces east? Well, then you can't do that because what if
back.
everything
I
has
was
this
gonna
like argument.
go for it, Nathan.
Oh, it's like every way you try to get like specific, there's just so many factors to it. But I think in general, like if somebody uses 10,000 kilowatt hours a year, you'd want a system to produce around 13,000. And what's 10,000 a year? About 30 a day. So between like 15 and 20 kilowatt hours on that battery.
So Nathan, and I mean, Everett, if you got thoughts on this as well. I grew up in the Australian solar industry about a year or two after nationwide net metering was killed. So we call it feed-in tariffs in Australia back in the day. And it got down to roughly what California's at now, if not a bit less. So I was never in a solar industry in the first 5, 6, 7 years of my career in solar where we could match 1-to-1. So we always educated customers on self-consumption, gave them usage schedules, like helped them front load their self-consumption during the day. Why on earth is that not brought up in the US market? I don't hear anything about self-consumption education.
I don't think people understand the value of consuming it while it's being produced under NEM 3.0.
But that's such an amazing sales tool. Like surely sales guys would tap into this. Like I really try to teach this as much as possible. Tap into, hey man, instead of your magic button solar, how about you give the customer and say, hey, as long as you do this, this, and this, we can make some magic happen. Our sales guys so addicted to just being able to tap a magic button for customers and just like not have to give the customer any responsibility. Like what's stopping them from doing that? It seems such a no-brainer thing to do.
You're 100% correct, and it really comes down to how can we get the core leadership to have their understanding where it makes it a priority, where they want to understand it, and then that way it needs to get sent down to the end of the line. Now, one thing that I will state is that if I'm going to challenge any part of our industry, it's actually the software design and proposal tools. Because right now they have the ability to tell a story. So there's going to be a focal point of developers in the back end with oversight that literally touch hundreds of thousands of people in the United States market to make sure that story is told, which is actually an educational point because the sales rep has quicker adoption, has the ability to go through there and learn themselves through that storyline as that gets presented with what's going in, what's going out, and it becomes very, very applicable. But that's going to take a shift in that software space to where we're looking at interval data, for example. Now, granted, there is 28% of the market in the United States with that, small municipal utility companies and co-ops, and even some of the larger ones like down in Arizona, APS SRP, where there's not an automated version of that. Sometimes it's not even available, right? Where you've got to take more of a manual approach and have some education around asking the right questions to your point. But I feel like if we were to have the adoption of interval data as a standard coming in, whether that's 30 minutes, 1 hour, or 15 minutes, like in California, then what's that going to do is that's going to be able to take Nathan's job, not have to worry about north, south, east, or west, where let the system actually do its own math and state is like, hey, I'm seeing that you're consuming this much in this window of time. And instead of doing some averages, which is all we've been able to do, I mean, we pulled 250 meters recently in California alone. And those 250 meters put us between about 110 to 120% offset, was allowing for the CapEx, OpEx access where it made the most sense. Some projects were a little bit higher than that, where you're getting like those 130s. Some were a little bit lower, but we're actually training on about 110 to 120% oversizing, because in the summer, you're going to have overproduce and you're going to lose all that down the grid. But the fact you have excess to generate in the winter, fall, and spring time of the year, that extra 3, 4, 5 kilowatt hours going into that battery now can be discharged when the power cost is 40, 50, 60, 70 cents a kilowatt hour. Once you account for all taxes and charges, is significant. But there has to be a maturity of multiple facets in the industry. It's not just the sales guy. It actually has to be the leadership that's actually driving that information. That leadership has to drive behavior within the software design and proposal tools where we can actually trend. And I mean, I'm not a software guy. We own a software company, but I'm not the one that puts the zeros and ones in. But I mean, I feel like in 12 months, the bulk of the industry could be matured to where this is not just a California thing. This is Hawaii. This is Tennessee. This is Arizona. This is Texas. Multiple markets have been on the chopping block for reducing net metering. You got Louisiana, you got Kansas City, Oklahoma, Idaho just dropped their net metering. If you go above 10 kilowatts over in New Mexico, now you actually get avoided cost, which is 2.3 cent buyback instead of 1-to-1. I mean, this has to happen now. We're behind, in my opinion. And so, if anybody's watching this, I mean, go call your software guys and say, hey, we would love to see you come up with a solution. How can we help? I'm willing to help. Nate's willing to help. You guys are, I know that. But we can get the right information in the right hands, which has the biggest adoption. There's a proposal tool in every sales guy's hands. Some, might have some Excel spreadsheet guys, but I mean, that tool is powerful and it touches the most people of the entire industry.
I 100% agree. We built our system generation tool from the ground up in Cenevo, and a lot of proposal tools are going extremely complicated in one way, and that direction that they're going, in my opinion, is just wild. Like, they're putting so much energy into all these random things. Like, I hate estimated savings. The crazy estimated savings that I see in proposals tools is so wild to me. It doesn't on so many different metrics. So I'm 100% with you that we need to connect the software devs to the leadership, to the sales guys, and actually make a coherent system that benefits the customer and the sale at the same time, for sure.
Yeah, and I think the hard part too, to go back to like why don't the sell, because I do sell not as much as I used to, but I know why they don't. I mean, it's really hard. You're in that house. You're trying to close this deal. This is how you make money. You're sitting there sweating. You're trying to tell this customer this is the easiest thing ever. You just have to make a choice to save money. It's no different than what you do now. Like, you pay a power bill now. Why can't you pay a cheaper bill? Oh, by the way, you got to change your whole lifestyle for this. You got to start using power or else it's not going to save you money, or else you could
But,
actually spend more money.
but
I see why they don't do it.
okay, so let me give a pushback here, because this is one of my biggest things with self-consumption training. That's the mindset of the original sales guy, like, because they've been used to having to only push a button, so they see that education thing as a downside. But here's another take on it. I believe that homeowners, when they get big power bills, they're actually wanting more responsibility over their life, because they don't have any opportunity to drop this power bill. They can't choose their provider, they can't choose their rates. So what we really found in Australia is, when you go to someone and says, dude, my power bill is, I can't afford this, and you go to them and say, look, I can help you out, but you're going to have to put some effort in as well, they like it. They're like, okay. And we used to set up usage schedules and do timers and some pretty basic stuff, but they were excited about it, and it actually helped the sale. I know it's a weird thing to think, especially if you just, you're used to selling NEM 2.0 California, boom, okay, good to go.
Yeah.
But if you pitch it properly as a responsibility, as like a really cool thing, like something that they can, oh, honey, did we make sure that we're timing everything today that the schedule says to do? Like, it's a cool thing that they like, but only if you pitch it that way.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I've never had something like usage, but I'll do, if somebody doesn't want that, like when I was explaining 130, 140%, a lot of that's kind of like, hey, don't really worry about it. Like, this should be enough. And if you go whatever, a 20, 30, this should be good, versus hey, we can go lower, 110, 115, go lower on the battery, but it's now your homework to not dry your clothes at 8 o'clock at night. Dry them at like 11. If you had to heat, but that's like the most I'll go into it. Like, I'll touch on it. Like, hey, use those big loads when solar is cranking, not during the peak hours.
One of my most common line in sales in Australia was, hey guys, this is going to do wonders for you if you do what I'm telling you, but if you're being a monkey and washing your dishes at 1 a.m. in the morning, I can't help you. And it's humorous. Exactly. They laugh, but they get it. They're like, that makes sense. If I want cheaper power bills, I got to put some energy into it. So I don't think it's...
Well, let me flip the script for you guys a little bit here for a second, because, right now we're talking about California, where the highest cost of energy in America. But let me talk to you about the other 49 states. Is that, outside of Hawaii, let's kind of put those guys aside. But the reality of it is electric bill savings is actually not a requirement. So that's where some of the things that we need to actually flip the script on and realize where the biggest successful guys that are going into California are coming outside of California. I've got a group right now that's coming out of Arkansas that's going into California, and they are freaking killing it. Their average customer pays $37 more a month because they added value. They're accounting for HVAC. They're putting in new units. They're accounting for insulation. They're going through and taking that proper approach, which, yes, isn't more than their electric bill savings. Sometimes it's just an electric bill swap in that regard. But the thing is the secondary benefit is, for one, there's an independence, like you stated, Josh, where people want to have that sense of control and understanding and, wig out on their Android type phone type people. But then also on the other side is that they're thinking about their home, their family, the insurance, some of the interesting things that we've been in the world the last 5 years, especially with COVID and some of the challenging things in other countries. There's more to this than just electric bill savings. The majority of the industry doesn't support electric bill savings. And if you save a buck, congratulations. But for the most part, you're hedging longevity. You're accounting for the ability to use more energy. Sometimes that's the inhibitor, to where it's like, man, my bill's $300-400 a month. And the fact is, if you can actually give me a $400 bill a month right now, but I can actually keep the air conditioner at 76 instead of 81, where I'm sweating my rear end off all the time. I mean, these are the things that you really have to consider. But the only way you can do that is you slow down, understand your customer, be available to actually listen, because some of these sales guys just talk so much where it's like, you never understand what their hot buttons are. You never understand what some of the needs or purposes are. You don't have the ability to build rapport. And because of that, cancellations are higher right now. Cancellations right now are in some markets are as high as 70%, where before they're in the 20s. And so how much work are you willing to do to where slow your freaking self down? Because the pull through on those customers, properly educated, where they look at you as a subject matter expert, that's the long tail of this. It's not a volume game in that regard if you can actually maintain quality. And so I just kind of want to flip the script a little bit is that California still has some aspects to where you have that electric bill savings consideration, especially with higher rates, PG&E just making their swap again, and more things that are being proposed. But I mean, the rest of the world, it ain't like that. So we want to make sure that this actually is able to go through the entire U.S. and use that value add for different rate schedules, different utility infrastructure considerations, different weather concerns or disaster areas, Florida, the Midwest, the flooding that's happened in California. My own customer, he called me today. He's actually a personal friend of mine, and we're doing a big mega mansion for him down in La Jolla. And his exact answer was like, man, yeah, we're going through this process to go and get my solar back up and running and adding batteries. But my stinking power went out last week, and my pumps, if those don't work, all that water can come back, literally backfill into my 14,000 square foot house. So what are you going to do at that point, right? This is actually a collision avoidance. We really want to see exactly what the customer needs are. And because I know that guy and we had that conversation and it turned into a 2 or 3 day conversation, I know exactly why he's going forward with solar and battery.
I mean, this is the biggest challenge that I see American sales guys having to overcome mentally, is the value that they have put into solar over the past few years because of what I call the magic button solar, right? And if people can't, if you're a sales guy, solar sales guy watching this right now, you can't get over the line. Solar does not have to save people money to be valuable for them, and homeowners are very often willing to pay more for solar if pitched properly. If you're a sales guy listening to that line and that doesn't make sense to you, you got to do some thinking of what your actual product is, because it's not just a number, a low number.
Oh yeah, when I started selling,
in the rest of America, I mean, you got 6-cent power. So
yeah, even in California, when I started selling solar 8 years ago, every single presentation I had a graph showing where they're paying right now. But eventually, you're going to be paying here. If you're going to go solar, why give any more money to utility, right? So it's something now that it's becoming a cashier, right? Like it's so easy. Anybody can go ahead and sell solar. It's becoming now you have to have more education, understand how it works, right? And for Everett, I wanted to ask you, PG&E is now just, I heard in the news, topped SDG&E as the most expensive electricity in California, right? Which is insane because SDG&E is freaking so expensive. But you were mentioning earlier that this is battery
utility.
Yeah, this is becoming popular now, batteries throughout the country. And you mentioned a few. Can you just go a little more detail? Where do you see like batteries really becoming important? What territories, what states maybe, what utilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So the highest markets that we're seeing with energy storage attachment is California, Arizona, Utah, Texas, Florida. We're seeing North and South Carolina. And we're also seeing Tennessee, Arkansas, and Kansas and Oklahoma. So those are the typically top markets right now that we're seeing in the energy storage side. And if you actually follow that, those are the areas that have the lowest net metering rates and also have the highest areas of disaster. And so we're starting to see more and more trends of that. Now, granted, we've shipped to 48 states last year of the entire United States.
Wow.
And so, I mean, there's obviously trends and opportunity for all across the board. People are thinking differently as an insurance policy, right? Because where even markets where there's one-to-one net metering, like in Florida, for example, like Tampa Electric Supply, TECO, their cost of energy residentially is actually going down. But yet, even though they're putting that rate case, I know the first time I've ever heard this in a long time, but the fact, even though they're doing that rate case where they're dropping the cost of energy down, we just did installations on their behalf because they understand the value of a battery in association with the grid, where there may be soon opportunities where there's incentive to bring your own battery. So the utility companies even looking at this as a total combined opportunity here. But to original of your question here, Joe, is that batteries are definitely a mechanism of insurance. That's the first reason that batteries really became popular, right? It's because in case of an emergency, you've got a cabin out in the middle of nowhere. That was really the number one focus. And now it's just like, hey, we can actually use these batteries daily. Up in PG&E territory, which is the highest contributor of this, the wind blows more than 25 miles an hour. What do? They turn your power off.
Yep.
Because they're worried about all the sway of the lines and putting pressure and resistance there and creating fires. You have different aspects of weather that contribute to that, high and low temperatures. Like down in Texas, you had 3 freeze storms, 398 people lost their lives 3 years ago, which makes me sick because I had a solution for that. And granted, because it didn't get down to the end of the line through the conduit of solar sales folks and proper education, unfortunately, those folks did not have that opportunity for that support. And so Florida, major disaster down there. Puerto Rico, you look at some of the challenges down there and the fact that the battery attachment sitting in the 90th percentile. So this is the things that we need to be prepared for.
Yeah, and I kind of have said it for a long time to customers and framed it as, you're trying to get away from the utility company by why are we even meeting? Because you're not happy with your current situation and you're looking to change. Why then are you only looking to change halfway? And they're like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, the sun's only shining for half the year, right? And it's down half the year. So you can either get a half system or a full system. I can either halfway fix your problem during the day, but you're still going to have a huge problem at night, or you can become independent, break away from the grid. Because even them 2.0 customers, I was explaining this and I was explaining, look, there's nothing stopping them from just continue, because NEM 2.0 is based on the rate, the on-peak and off-peak rate. It is 1-for-1 in that hour. So all they have to do is change the rates. And and now, they could do off, and now you're screwed even on NEM 2. Now you need a battery just as bad on NEM 2.0 as you did NEM 3.0. So I've been explaining this for years, of selling a full system or a half system. Do you want a full system or a half system? And that was just a system with batteries or a system without batteries. Didn't have to have backup. That has nothing to do with being the full or half, but batteries are not.
Nate,
and then that really gets them thinking, like, you know what, you're right. If I don't have batteries, I'm still bound by their rules. I'm trying to break away from the utility. And you can't do that you literally can't it's impossible without batteries.
So
I'll speak on behalf of all.
Let me just ask him real quick on this, because it's the same. Oh, yeah, the same thing, Josh. Go ahead.
No, I don't think so. I'll speak on behalf of all the sales guys yelling at the screen right now that would say, but Nathan, I am dealing with customers right now that they can't afford their current power bills. I have to be able to match or decrease their monthly even for them to be able to afford solar, and then I can't put a battery in there. So, my response is I think solar without battery is better than no solar. And so the second question would be, are we talking about retroactive installs after? Is that the better of both two evils? Or
I think it just depends on where you're at in your NIM. I mean, if you have this 1-for-1 NIM and that independence has zero value to that customer, then you can't add the battery. But it depends on that customer too, because even if it is a 1-for-1 NIM, you know, obviously they're going to want the batteries more for backup and for the fact that, you know, they're not touching the grid and this is my system and I do it at night. And there's plenty of customers like that, especially now. There's so many customers who are afraid of like China attacking us or hacking the grid, or half the customers want batteries, at least in our area, for some attack that they think is going to happen to our grid. And
Doomsdayers, we love
so
them.
then, you know, if it's something like that, then this has nothing to do with saving money. Does building a bunker in your backyard save you money? No. Does having a 2-year food supply save you money? No. These are things you spend money on to be prepared. So I guess it just depends on your NIM. And if your NIM's not 1-for-1, then does it make more sense to do I call it a consumption only system? So a system that just feeds your consumption, which typically is around 40%. You know, it depends. That's around 40%. It's like, hey, you're just consuming it as it's producing. Maybe that's better for that, and maybe it is, depending on your NIM. But for ours, that gap, when the delta between what your credit is freaking 35 cents, it also makes financial sense to get the battery. So I guess my answer would be, it depends. If it makes financial sense, then yeah, you have this financial argument. If it doesn't make financial sense to add a battery, then maybe you're in a 1-for-1 NIM, and then a battery is not a conversation about savings. That's a conversation about being prepared. And then maybe you're not in a 1-for-1 NIM. Then that depends. Then maybe a 40-50% offset no batteries is better than oversizing and getting, if they're just looking at the economics of it and nothing to do with the independence of
it. Can maybe Everett, can you explain to me in layman's terms the math behind? I'm in NEM is not 1-to-1. Maybe there's something. It's not amazing. But why am I going 40, 50, 60% instead of overstocking, especially in terms of 5 to 10 years down the road, assuming we're not going to get any additional modules, where everything is just going to stay as a module only system? What's the layman's term of the math behind that, and why does that make sense?
Yeah, simple answer to that is that solar that is produced in real time is first consumed by the home first, and because that's immediately consumed, right? But if your solar at that exact moment is producing 10 kilowatt hours, and I'm a 9-to-5er, there's a 2-family working home in that scenario, what happens is that home's at idle during the day, where that 7, 8, 9, 10 kilowatts of solar produced at that 100% offset, there's only maybe a 500 watt or a 1 or 2 kilowatt worth of load during the day. All that excess has to go back to the grid. So when you have a reduced buyback via the utility company, what happens is that even if I wrote a check and paid cash for that system, what happens is the cost to generate that kilowatt hour nowadays is between 8 and 16 cents a kilowatt hour to generate it. But when the utility company only gives you 3 back, that's a really bad return on investment. And so what we want to do is we want to actually ask the simple question is like, hey, are you a 9-to-5er, or do you guys work from home? Is there a homemaker inside the home where you're home with family and younger children? In that case, what happens is that's going to state is like, hey, I just need to build the system to where whatever the home needs at that given time, the solar can generate it, but there's never any excess. So it goes back to the utility company. And we're typically seeing it on a national level that the export of your kilowatt hours throughout the entire year, you're typically exporting anywhere from 75 to 60% of your power on an annualized basis. And so you're looking at these 40, 50, maybe 60% offsets at max, because that puts you in that scenario where at least when it's generated, it's consumed immediately and you're offsetting that bill. And then your nighttime usage needs to come from the utility company.
And that's why I call them consumption only systems.
Right.
Yep.
And the distinction you made there is the self-consumption. And here's my issue with, because I see, the sales guys say, oh, I'm just going to sell 50% now every single time. And they have no idea about the customer's self-consumption. You know what I mean?
50% could be that like Everett said, if that customer was one of those where 75% gets exported, That guy needed a 25% offset,
Yeah, exactly.
not a 50. Now he's double buying 25% because you're buying it because you bought solar. You get your 3 cents back. So yeah, you spend 16 cents, you get 3 cents back. So I spent 13 cents, and now I got to buy it again for 40. I was better off not producing it at all.
And you could look at it the other way as well. Maybe they literally do their laundry and dishwashing and everything at night, and that's just their schedule.
Yeah.
But if you ask them if you want to change it to 1 p.m. at the day, they'll be like, yeah, sure, whatever. And now their self-consumption skyrockets. You know, it's like I don't know why don't people talk about this more? It's like it's at the core of all these issues. Just it's not talked about.
I mean, the historics of it is that there's not a whole lot. We've had a lot of working class homes in the United States. And with that being said, it's hard to adjust someone's schedule without smart appliances to be able to say, hey, use all your bigger loads during the day. No, I come home from work, I plug in, I plug it in my laptop, getting that charged up, using my electric range, using my electric hot water heater to do a load of dishes. I got to have laundry for the next day. I got to bathe the kids before school the following day. And so these are some of the things that really come into real life that are really hard to shift people's trends, right? Only in the case that they're homemakers or working from home where they can split off. I mean, I've got a home office, but yet, man, I sometimes get breakfast at 6 o'clock in the afternoon because I can't even step away from my laptop. How the heck am I going to do a load of laundry in the meantime as well, right? So we have to take in the human element, educate where you can, but also too is that also realize that you can't always make those adjustments.
It is true that the North American 9 to 5 is much more established than, for example, it was in Australia. No digs to my Aussies out there, but not a lot of people are working full time, and we're a lot more chill. There's a lot more homemakers at home, so that does make sense. If you've had an avatar that has been the same for a century, then for sales guys at least, getting away from that and changing that mindset and maybe asking them, oh, are you working from home now since COVID? I mean, what's the percentage? Not zero, right?
And I think that's where smart home gets, where you can push it and make more money and sell them. Solar is so boring, and it's not something that they're gonna brag to their friends about. Battery systems are this freaking awesome panel where I can control my breakers with my phone. That's something you would show your friends. So that's when you can get into, look, I get it, these shifts are hard, but we can have a system that will not even let you turn on your dryer during these hours. So when you go try, oh yeah, I'm not allowed to use it during these hours because it won't even let you. It's going to shut it off during these hours. And then maybe this will kind of force that habit on you, having the smart home force these habits on you, because they make it to where you can't even accidentally do it.
Yeah. And solar isn't just boring. It's like, what do people hear when they hear solar now? Like there's a negative reaction. It's been forced down people's throats. But full home energy efficiency upgrade, smart home, oh, that sounds so much nicer. It's much more attention grabbing, right?
And I've been saying this a long time in training reps, like, hey, instead of trying to lower your price, sell them more stuff, and sell them things that are cool. It's harder to sell someone something that they need. Power is something that you need. It's harder to almost sell something that's like a responsibility, a responsible choice, something that you need, save money, than it is to like sell someone a 100-inch flat screen TV for $5,000 that they don't need. It's just a complete waste of money. It's almost easier to sell that thing because they want it. It's cool. So it's easier to sell wants than needs, I think, because you can get this emotional attachment to it. So that's why I like bringing in things that they think are cool. And obviously, I've kind of hit, some people are looking at it like, I don't give a shit about that, man. Why are you even talking about that? Like, I would never be able to fit. So you got to know your customer. But it does a couple. It makes it to where the industry can go into what we've been talking. The smart home. If they start bringing up these things, and if you it clicks in your head that, you know what, it's almost easier to sell them being a little bit more expensive, but giving them cool gadgets that the other guys aren't giving them. Even if it's as simple, I've found so many times a 220 outlet, people think that's so cool. And it costs us like $100. And it's like, I can be like,
Wait, what was that again?
it's
So
just a 220 outlet to, I can like put it on a manual if they don't want batteries or what, let's just say they didn't have it, or hey, you may get an EV charger down the road that you can just plug into this. Or
Ooh,
right.
that's a good
if
one.
they already had like a pool start generator or something like that, they wanted the bat and they don't want the expensive backup, I'll throw it through a little manual transfer switch, will shut up, and you can fire up your little gen and you have whatever 3,000 watts to your, just something simple like that is not really that, it's less expensive than dropping your price $2,000, and you're
Yeah.
giving them something cool.
I always hate bringing up like EV chargers and whatnot, because then you get it in their head that they want a Tesla eventually, and then they're like, wait, should I get a 13 kilowatt system instead of a 10? Oh, maybe I'll wait until I get my Tesla next year and then I'll go solar. So it's like a dark path of like giving them like they want an EV now. So
and that goes back to when you say, why don't reps bring this up, or why don't reps talk about this? I am telling you, because you were trained as a rep from day one. Don't let them ask questions. Don't answer questions. Avoid questions. Don't get into it. Don't.
yeah.
To this day, I mean, there are people like Jake is very against training like that. No, be very educated. But it is so, they train you to be so afraid of questions because questions will make them want to think about it. And an $80,000 solar system is not something that you should have to think about. You should just be able to make a decision right there and just sign.
Dude,
Think about it for one day? Are you kidding me? Like, this has got to be one and done. Don't let them ask questions. So unfortunately, that's what a lot of training is. And so they're so afraid. Well, if I bring up usage habits during the day, they're going to want to think about this decision. And if I leave this house without a close, I'm a failure. And so it's like, unless you leave that, it's just this bad mentality of like, you're a failure if you have to go back to their house 3 or 4 times and spend 5 or 6 hours over 3 or 4 different meetings to figure out what they want. Like, for some reason, you're not a very good sales guy if you did that. You're a really good sales guy, and you're somebody who should be training the masses of people if you can go in and get it done in 45 minutes. From meeting them to them signing up. So unfortunately, that's like most the headspace.
What's going on, guys? Let's take a quick break from that podcast and let you know a bit about what we got going on for you here right now at the Solar Pulse podcast. Joe, what do you got for us?
SolarCon is right around the corner and it's going to be epic, especially with the headliners we have like Gary Vee, Jeremy Miner, Andy Elliott, David Meltzer, and we have over 150 trainer speakers hitting every genre of the solar industry. And our expo floor is going to be epic. We're going to have lounges, bars, the pianist to the presidents, and activities. It's going to be the most conversations you've had in any event of the year. And then on top of that, this is going to be the best after parties too. So you guys do not want to miss it. April 18th, 19th, and 20th in Salt Lake City. Go to the website, attendsolarcon.com. Use the code VIRTUALSOLAR, and that'll get you an extra 10% on top of the already discounted on the website itself. So if you guys don't know, now you know. Make sure you get there.
Love it. And of course, for all of your remote solar sales needs, Virtual Solar Club, the home of all things remote solar sales, virtualsolar.club. We got training, we got leads, we got installation infrastructure, community support systems, live training 3 times a week, 500 hours of courses, the largest solar sales training library in existence. Virtual Solar Club is the home of all things remote solar sales. Check it out. And of course, you get free trials to Sonevo, the best solar sales software in the world. Gets you lead programs, additional training on how to sell those leads from your computer, whether that's from a beach in Mexico or maybe from your home office. We're here to support you. We're ready to rock. Let's get back to the pod.
One last question on net metering. real quick, Nate and Everett, if you want to add to it too. So now with net metering 3.0, if you add solar panels, you lose out on net metering 2.0. If you add solar panels, you have to go to net metering 3.0, right? So with battery only though, you can actually add the battery with net metering 2.0, keep net metering 2.0, and that could help with a true up bill. Is that becoming a popular thing? And is battery only installs becoming popular yet?
They are.
Whoever wants to answer that.
Becoming exceptionally popular right now. We have entire teams that are dedicated where they're just doing retrofits. Now, one thing I will state is that not every battery can retrofit in a solar system. Even Enphase has some limits with some of their older microinverters to some of their newer equipment. And so you have to make sure you're aligned with the proper hardware that can actually accomplish that. Now, you also have to consider the financing mechanism, right? We're still in a very heavy financing category where customers are not writing checks everywhere in all markets. So you're still looking at the higher component there. But all your lenders out there actually have a 10-year battery-only loan. And we have a 25-year battery-only loan on our side, but so that way you can get a lower payment.
That's huge.
So we're seeing a lot more retrofits out there.
That's
Yeah,
baller.
25-year battery on the loan? I didn't know that. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, we're the only ones that have it, but in that scenario, it's because we're able to get that payment down lower because we have the 25-year battery warranty. But you have to make sure you're accounting for some of those economics, right? Some people are adding it for backup purposes only. Today, I was on a call with a group that's out of Maryland, and they had 5 requests to add a battery only because they wanted it for backup purposes. At that point, that mindset is like, hey, I'm already paying, $800 a month for my car insurance. I'm going to go ahead and add another $100 a month to add a battery because it's an insurance policy, as Nate kind of stated before, right? Different mindset. California, you're going to get actually a dual benefit because when the wind blows, you got you covered. But also too is that you're going to be able to offset that NEM to high time of use window of time, and then be able to arbitrage the solar during the day. And then if you're on NEM 1, truthfully, you actually can stay on NEM 1 if you're grandfathered in and actually add a battery without any kind of impact to your net metering rate schedule. But in that case, those guys are typically focusing around backup and then also some savings too, because ultimately the costs have gone up. Even though you're locked in an old rate schedule, the cost of energy is still increased. And so that's the way that works. But if you added solar, if you added any KW whatsoever that's an AC KW that can be referenced, it will flip you to NEM 3, no question.
Which is really, really bad. There's not going to be any way you're talking savings at that point.
No.
But you also have to be very careful, guys. If they are on NEM 2.0 and getting a true up, a battery will not make the true up go away. You got to recalculate the math on what it will do is make you have 0 kilowatt hours during on peak and then all your kilowatt hours. You are not creating more kilowatt hours. You're shifting. So you can't just say, hey, adding a battery eliminates this bill. You got to do the math and you got to say, okay, if all of it was billed at off peak, what would the bill be? And then that's what your new true up will be. It will not be 0. It will just, and because that delta is only like 10 cents, again, it's not going to be a conversation about savings. Like all of our battery add-ons are exactly what Everett. How pissed are you when your power goes out and you're paying for solar and it's not working? Those people want
to call out the myth here, guys. Like, batteries do not produce power. We get that comment all the time. I was like, yeah, but if I had a battery, I can just do like a 50% offset, right? No, it doesn't. It's not making up for the other 50% of your power. You've got to make sure you're asking the right questions and setting the right expectations.
You got to do the opposite because of weather. You got to overproduce and have enough for what you're consuming, and that's only because of weather and stuff.
Yep.
So,
I was going to state one thing really quick. I mean, we're talking about education here. I do want to give a quick little blip about EVs, though. I know you love them, Josh, but there is actually a right way and a wrong way to do it. So ultimately here, guys, is a lot of people, because they're coming home from work, bulk of energy of EV charger or EV customers are actually charging their cars from, when they get home from work. So that vehicle has an opportunity to be plugged in anywhere from 10 to 16 hours at any given time. Well, the reality of it is that do I need to go and plug that EV charger in and actually use that level 2 charger where I'm pulling 9, 10, 11, 12 kilowatts from the grid? Like my Hummer, I can charge it at 19.2 kilowatts. I mean, it's just a massive amount of power. Well, guess what? That self-consumption battery that you put in a single 5P end phase, which never do that. I'll have that conversation later. But ultimately is that battery can only give out so much power at a time. So if you're home, which we found in California, from the hours of 4 to 9 p.m., the average home's loads are anywhere from 9 to 15 kilowatts. So if you actually already have a 9 to 15 kilowatt load on the high end, and then you go plug in a 9 kilowatt Tesla charger, you're now sitting at 18 kW. Well, that Solar Edge battery gives you 5 kilowatts of output. The LG battery is 5 kilowatts. The end phase is 5.88 kilowatts with 2 5Ps. I mean, you're limited to some of those aspects. Ours is going to be anywhere from 9 to 15 kilowatts. But still, you're even exceeding, my battery product that's the highest, output of any solution out there. You're still exceeding it. And you're buying that at 40, 50, 60 cents a kilowatt hour, which is massive. Well, guess what? I'm glad you charged your car in 4 hours to the next day's commute, but you're only commuting on average 30, 40, 50 miles on an average per day if you're actually going for the long haul. Some people are trying to keep close where their commute's 20 or, maybe 20 miles in that next following day. Well, guess what? If you pulled out your level 1 charger that plugs into your receptacle in your garage, that 110 outlet, if that thing just pulled, which is about 1.3 to 1.8 kilowatts, that's all you added. Well, if you did that for 8 hours, you still got your 30 or 40 miles of range for the following day, and you didn't put massive demand on your freaking home where you're having to buy that power from the utility company. Your battery, you're now within the threshold of a battery where that can be the supply for that solution. And so you want to make sure you're accounting for reality is these level 2 chargers, 90% of the time are not needed. Even with my big old EV Hummer over here that I have, that's just the most inefficient electric vehicle ever made.
But beautiful.
Where I get
it's beautiful.
Where I get 1.2 miles per kilowatt hour.
I was gonna say, what do you get? Two miles?
So yeah, 2 miles is in the summer though. If I'm driving around town. So
it's a nice ride.
That was a good time. But I mean, even in this scenario is I'm still plugging that sucker in 10 or 12 hours, I still have 40 miles of commute for the following day, which I'm still within my thresholds. And so that's one thing that's heavily missed. Hey, you've got a Kia EV6. I have a Model 3 Tesla. I have a Rivian R1S. In that scenario, just go to Google, see how many miles per kilowatt hour they averagely get, and say, hey, I need 30 miles tomorrow. Well, guess what? My Model Y gets 3 miles for every kilowatt hour I put into it. I need 10 kilowatt hours to put in that car, and I'm plugged in for 10 hours. You're way on beyond what you need. So save that, because that contributes to the human element that you talked about, Josh. Man, get better behavior out there. We actually certify people with how to actually set up EV chargers.
That's great.
It's a massive
don't
mess.
the EV a lot of them have apps where you could like get the level 2 and make that automatic though, right? Like, hey, I only want to charge 1.2 kilowatts.
I don't know of an app that doesn't do that outside of Rivian. You can actually limit it in the car, but Rivian, the app can't do it.
Okay.
But the car can limit it. So when you plug into that ID, which I don't recommend a Rivian, it tried to run me off the road a bunch of times and try to kill my family. But at the end of the day, don't go that car. But that's how that car works. So yeah, I know this is going public and I got proof. So, but yeah, you just have to ask the right questions. But EV charging is a massive amount of use. And in California with that cost of energy that high, man, you can really gamify it if you have the right behavior.
And that goes back your battery. It's also very important because what I think with NEM 3.0 is worse than taking from the grid is giving to the grid, because then you're buying twice. You're literally throwing away money. At least when you're buying it from the grid, you're getting power out of it. You're literally just wasting money when you give to the grid. So when you talked about that battery not being able to discharge, you got to think about it in reverse too. If your solar is cranking and you're not pulling loads, well, guess what? If you did that Solar Edge battery, whatever, and your solar is going at 8 kilowatts, your battery can only charge at 5. 3 of that is still being, half of it almost is
Going over the utility company
yeah,
and you're
you
getting
just
3
spent all
cents.
this time explaining to the customer how
Shit.
NEM3, how it doesn't make sense to get, but then you give them this design that's still going to give to the grid. And if you want to learn how to sell against, I'm finding a lot of the proposals I'm seeing when I'm going up, or other reps are coming to me with proposals. They've been pretty good. They've been sized pretty well. But the times that there's not, it is so easy to just be like, yeah, then why did he design your system to not even do what he explained what you have to do? That's good that he explained it correctly. If you didn't design it correctly, you're still going to be backfeeding the grid with this system. You have,
And get educated
yeah,
like we did.
you have a 12
Text the other
kilowatt
day.
PV, yeah, you have a 12 kilowatt
With your
PV
inverter.
system with 2 5Ps. You're
Yeah.
going to be cranking so much power back to the grid, it's not even funny. So it's
Yeah.
not even like you have those 5Ps there. So you got to size it correctly on both ends, charging and discharging.
That
And
is
I'll just
definitely
clarify. I love
that.
pre-sale EVs, not post-sale EVs. Pre-solar EVs because they make the problem I'm solving much larger. Post-solar EVs because the problem I'm solving is not that big. So everyone getting their EV, then call me when your power bill goes up. I'm all for that. 100%. Let's go.
That's definitely something they
Learn how
don't
to read a spec
understand.
sheet so that way the EV's got you. Because I mean, Nate and I were texting the other day, and him and I always have some banter on social every once in a while. But I mean, you've got to really understand to read a spec sheet because, man, you're promising a customer a certain amount of performance on a battery, which it's not about capacity, it's about kW. It's about how much that battery can charge and discharge, as Nate was just stating. But I mean that battery was underperforming on a per battery basis of a full 300 to
From
500
their
watts
spec
on a 5
sheet.
kilowatt hour
Yeah.
from their spec sheet. I mean, that can really hurt a
Well,
customer's economics.
yeah. So, and then were we going to get into because that gets into like the different types, because I think people need to understand, like for me, yeah, there's AC DC coupled, but what's even kind of a bigger thing is the system like Storz or like home grid, or where it's like this inverter battery combo, which has huge benefits. And you I can up the capacity without having to up power if I don't need power, but I need a lot of capacity, or I can up power without having to purchase capacity. And then you have your batteries like Franklin or like Enphase, where it's almost like, to get the power that I need from this frame, I gotta buy so much extra battery. I didn't need the capacity, but I had to buy the capacity to get to the inverter to get the power. But then there's benefits to. I think they think, well, as this capacity goes up, and maybe that aligns good to where that Franklin is. Hey, 3 of these hits my capacity and hits my power needs. And then you
Can you
have
explain,
batteries
like,
like,
just in the layman's terms for people that are watching this that aren't super battery savvy? What category of battery are we talking about, and why is
so
it different?
I would say I think everyone understands AC coupled, DC coupled. You're either connecting the solar straight to charge the battery DC to DC, then it goes out to your loads, or you're
And
going,
converts one time.
yeah, converts one time, you're saving, it's obviously more efficient. Then the other way is, the solar and the solar's inverter, and then the battery has to convert that back. So those would be AC coupled system. That's how retrofits are. But then there's also in how the battery is designed. So a battery like Storz, I can be like, okay, I only need 10 kilowatts of continuous. Well, but I need 10 kilowatts of continuous power, but I need 60 kilowatt hours. Let's say, because this person lives in an area where it may get snowy and they want, in a snowstorm for a week, I want to be able to just run off batteries without having to worry about recharging them, but I don't need more than 10 kilowatts. So that's where I think it's important to know all the batteries because they all have a best fit for certain situations. So I think a best fit for that would be like a Storz battery, like 115K, because I can get that capacity where I need it. If I looked at like a Franklin, yeah, I may be able to get to my 10 kilowatts that I need with just two batteries, because those are the other types of batteries where the inverter for the battery is in the battery system itself. So as you increase in capacity, you're also increasing in power with the inverter. The downside to that is situations like this. I only need 10 kilowatts, so I only need two of these Franklin inverters, but I need 60 kilowatt. So I gotta buy 4 or 5 of these Franklins, and I have all this power I'm never gonna want, need, or use, but I had to buy it because it came with the battery to get to. Sorry, I'm coming. And in that situation, it's better to be able to control that power of your battery system and control your capacity of that battery system independently of each other rather than every time I add a battery, I also add power, which sometimes that becomes the better route because of just the way it works out. So it's good to know those differences and you're not overselling a customer more inverters for his battery than he needs because you're trying to get to that capacity, or the other way around. Maybe they only need a little bit of capacity, but they have this high draw for only like 4 hours. You can't really do that with the battery systems that come with the inverters and the batteries together. With a system like Storz, I can stack these inverters and just do like 20 kilowatt hours. So I guess it's a system where the battery and the inverter, it's more dynamic. It's less of chunks at a time. And then that's where I like the 5P more than like Tesla's not LFP, but more than Franklin, is because I can go in smaller chunks at a time and I can get more modular with it of where I need to go. I'm not just increasing by 13.5 kilowatt hours and 5 kilowatts every time. So I can get to where I need to go without overshooting or undershooting closer than I can with like a Franklin system, but you can't get wildly apart from each other like you can with a battery system that's separate from the inverters.
And also, it's not just, I know sales guys watch this and they're like, oh, but okay, but what about my commissions? It's not just that. If you're in that situation where you don't need that much kW, but you need storage, that's a save on your commissions as well, instead of stacking all these massive batteries on top of each other where we don't need that much kW, right?
Yeah.
So it's for the sales guys watching. It can also have a positive impact on your commission if you understand those situations.
Yeah, and ultimately, guys, is that you got to think of it two different ways. Is that you have to look at the inverter, which is how much power you can have at any given time. That power is going to offset that 9 to 15 kilowatts when everybody comes home from school, work, and play, and all the appliances turn on. So that way you're pulling from the battery, not the grid. And then you also have the flip side is if the power goes out, what am I wanting to keep back up? Am I just going through essentials to where, fridge and lights and internet and maybe a TV where that low, that power is minimal? Or am I trying to start an air conditioner? Like today, I had a client today finally sent me a spec sheet for a new build, and his air conditioner needs 177 amps to start for 3 seconds. But when it's running, it only needs 29 amps, So now he's like, well, what am I going to do? Traditionally, you'd have to stack like 2 big O inverters just to start something for 3 seconds, but then that one inverter just ends up being a startup solution. So you always have to start load first. What am I trying to power? On grid for self-consumption markets and off grid for markets that want to look at battery backup for emergency purposes. And then time, which is the battery itself, is the duration of time, right? From sundown to sun up is the most often approach that you want to consider. And so in that situation, you have to look at it to where, hey, first, whether I'm using Franklin, Enphase, Storz, you always start with what inverter, whether it's built in or external. How many inverters do you need? And then if it's coupled up to a battery capacity, that means your capacity stuck with either way. Or if you're setting up with a system that actually is separate, where the battery capacity is separate, then it's like the gas tank on your car. In this case, I'm a drag. I want to get down the drag strip in 11-second quarter mile. So I've got this huge engine, but my gas tank's like 10 gallons. That's it. But yet, if I'm grandma and I'm a freaking long hauler, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a Prius that's got 96 horsepower in it with a 40-gallon tank, and I'm going to freaking take that thing every bit of 700 miles. So it's two different scenarios. So you really have to make sure you're asking the right questions and understanding the market.
And are you a SpaceX rocket ship that uses half of its fuel just to get up, a few kilometers? Or are you going to Jupiter and, going?
Yeah.
And we call those miles here, Josh.
Yeah, that inverter power is much more popular.
Yes.
Or it's much more important to look at the inverter power. When you look at generators, gasoline generators, they don't, a customer doesn't say, oh, do I need a 16 kilowatt or a 22 kilowatt? They don't, that's what they don't say. Do I need 50 gallons of propane? You start with the engine. And then that's why, like you said, that grandma situation who doesn't need a big engine but needs a lot of capacity, to try to do that with these batteries where you're really selling them way more than they need, and it's not hitting their solution. But
sounds expensive.
Yeah, it becomes a lot more expensive than just having that inverter and battery system separate. But you also got to learn how to compare apples to apples, because, like, for example, with Storz, and you have 15 kilowatt hours, you can't even compare that to one Franklin, even though it compares on the capacity. It's so much more inverter power. It's like not even fair. It's like, no, I have to compare this to two Franklins, but because it's like not fair to Storz to say these are the same, because that one would be way more powerful. So you got to look at both.
Wait, was that a residential air conditioning you're talking about, Everett?
Yeah.
For the run?
Even my air conditioner in my house has a 96 amp startup. It's called an LRA. And so that's just another little caveat here, guys, is that if you're promising whole home backup, before you go and do that, go and look on the side of the unit, and you're going to look for 2 3-letter terms. LRA, which is the peak it takes to start the unit, and the RLA is the amps to run the unit, which will be the duration. And if you take both those numbers and times it times 240 volts or 240, that'll give you your number. So now you have a third condition, right? We talked about the engine size and the capacity of the battery, but now you have to look at the peak of that battery system. So like my system can peak at 100 amps, but which is 24 kilowatts. But yet like a Tesla battery can peak at 7 kilowatts for 10
amps.
seconds. It's like 33 amps. And so that's the challenge with that, is like, now what are you going to do? So there's some alternatives there. You can look at soft starts, where that can help reduce that. So we're already making those recommendations. And depending on the quality of soft start, or if the unit even is soft startable, because some of those units are like so ancient, you literally would just burn up equipment putting them in place. You've really got to consider that. And guess what? It's okay to tell your customer no, because we see more often on the other side is like, hey, I can make this happen, but I'm going to have to add additional equipment beyond a soft start. And here's your option, which is an additional $10,000 to be able to start your air conditioner. Is that worth it to you? And most of the time the customer says no. I'm like, perfect. Go buy a freaking wall unit that plugs into a 110 outlet and go air conditioner that one room in that emergency. Go pick it up at Home Depot for $120 and you're good to go.
Do that.
So it's okay to say no to your customers, because if not, that customer's calling you and he's going to rip your freaking name through the mud. Be like, these guys told me I was going to have whole home backup and start my air conditioner. Nope. Ain't going to happen.
And hopefully the installers tell them that.
I was saying that's another thing that grinds my gears with sales rep education, where they're acting all holier than thou because all of a sudden they're selling batteries because it's the right thing to do, and they're promising their customers whole home backup, and they give them a 10, like a standard 10 killy, and they're like, yeah, you're good to go, you got a battery, you're ready to rock. It's like, what are you you set the customer's expectations up properly, and you lost commissions, and the customer's going to have to do something differently. There's no positives there. but
When you're
sales
planning on
reps,
staying in this industry for a long time, you literally just hurt yourself 5, 10, 15 years down the road, where this is no longer a career, because this industry's got enough black eyes. We've got to make sure we're accounting for best practices and proper education, because man, the New York Times articles that are coming out, we need to start accelerating and really highlighting the good actors and making sure that we're telling the success stories. Like yesterday, we just had a win in Utah to where Residential Solar Association, the RSA, which I'm a member,
Let's
therefore,
go.
is we went through and fought the utility and a new bill that was trying to be proposed by a third party in this case, making the most insane aspects where the customer could actually cancel after 2 utility bills for no reason and require the solar company to totally take the whole system off the roof.
How is that even possible?
And so we got that. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, is if we wouldn't have shown up and with the proper education, with the good actors, with best practices, looking to collaborate and create the best outcome for the industry and long term, and make sure we're elevating the guys that are doing the right things, that are working hard and trying to do market correction, everybody showed up. And with that, we were able to say that that bill will not be looked at in any foreseeable future. But now we're now working with consumer protection. We're now working with the state. We're now going to be including some of the other groups in that local area, SIA included, where we can actually say, hey, we understand that this got brought up for good reason because there's some problems out there that need to be addressed. And then vice versa is, let us help you from the inside out to help you actually create what the reality is of our industry and how we can do better and make sure this gets down to the end of the line. And we're really excited about what happened. I mean, that was a massive win yesterday. And then ultimately, we're doing that same thing in SRP with the election down there. So if anybody's down in Arizona, get involved, hit us up. I'll get you involved February 24th. You got the ballot run that's happening, and being able to get the right people in the seats of the utility company. There's ways that the right people can get in front of the right situations and we can have some longevity. But man, if you don't know, don't be afraid to say, that's a great question. Let me call someone. Guess what? That's a great question. I don't know that. I will come back tomorrow because I'm not going to overpromise the solution. Some of these guys will be like, I had to have an answer. So I threw something on the wall and hopefully it stuck. And man, it just burns us and I'm tired of it.
And what sucks too is because there is an answer. If you want to do whole home, it's gonna be, let me figure it out, $82,000. Do you want to do it now? Well, no, not now. Okay, well then we can do everything besides that for $60,000. Is it worth that extra 20? So it's like all you got to do is say, and I tell customers this when they ask, it's like, listen, for the 4th time, I can do whatever you want. You just have to be willing to pay for it. Like, we can do whatever you want. We can come up with this. Yeah, but you got to pay for it. So, yeah, you want to start your AC that takes 170 amps? This is the price. Do you want to do it anymore? And usually the answer is like, well, I don't want to do it anymore. Well, yeah, you didn't want to, yes, I would love to drive a Ferrari. Tell me the price of one. Not for that price. No, I wouldn't want to do it for that. So it's they do have an answer. It's just give them the price. They're probably not going to like the price. It's always the freaking air conditioner every time. And if they don't like, or you go out there and it's 80 amps to start. Now you do have very affordable solutions. And now you got to look at, okay, how many Teslas is that? And now we get into that situation that I've talked about is like, maybe they only need 15 kilowatt hours, 20 kilowatt hours, but starting their AC is why they are doing this. So now they need, 4 Franklins or 15 kilowatt hours of Storz and that now instead of overshooting, you did everything they want and it was in the price they needed and you did it the right way because you knew how to pivot between different and you kind of knew, okay, lots of power, a little bit of batteries. That's the Storz solution. So, but coming down to power is the most important thing. Okay, this customer needs 50 amps, or they need, 12,000 watts of continuous power, and they need this of peak. You got to size that inverter in there, and now you can start pricing out. Okay, well, it's four Franklins, or it's 20 kilowatt hours with one 15K inverter. What's a better price? Rather than just going to this customer and saying one Franklin or 20 kilowatt, it's like, no, you're not doing it right.
Speaking of Storz, Everett, why is Storz not everywhere as much? I see like Enphase, and I see Solar Edge, and I see, Franklin's, the batteries. I don't see Storz as much in many places. Is there a reason for that? Are you not, doing it on purpose? Like, what's the reason I don't see Storz as much as I should be, based on how the experience everybody here about has with Storz?
I think that just comes down to your influence. Just some aspects around us. We have 3,800 certified partners across the U.S.
Nice.
We're carried by all the major distributors. We've had a long-standing success. The last model of our unit's been deployed 35,000 units of that latest model of our 5 kilowatt hour module. So I think it just kind of comes down to, what your circle looks like. There is more education that we're working on. There is some diversification that's happening in the lending space right now. And so we're looking to working with more lenders and making sure that enables the option for partners to get access to Storz power. We've had some partners that have just truly moved over to one lender type, which I never recommend. Never marry yourself to one guy. It can create some liabilities, especially with these, fly-by-night sometime options that are coming through with these TPO products, leases and PPAs and prepaids. But, as soon as we get on those AVLs, then immediately they'll adopt our solutions. We just launched a new lease recently, and we're the only battery listed in that whole lease, for example, and that's a national play. So, I think it just comes down to where you're physically looking and working and what you have access to. And sometimes it comes down to is that we found that the distributor market is a little biased. I know that's scary for me to say because other people are going to watch this, but it comes down to is they want to sell what's on their shelves first. And so what's on their shelves may not be good. I'm going to give an example. I won't call out who it is, but there actually is a distribution branch that had known, the guy actually told me over the phone, he's like, hey, do you know anybody that wants these LG chems? The LG chems were the ones that were discontinued. They had not been through the recall yet, and they've been sitting on the shelves for over about 31 months, which is now, they've never gone through reconditioning. The shelf life on batteries do not last that long. And so I knew he was trying to push those products. I said, hey, man, don't ever do that. You need to literally go through an EPA approved location and get those things gone, because those are just ticking time bombs. A friend of mine all of a sudden posts that he's installing these LG Chem batteries and just got this killer deal at this distribution branch. And I called him. I said, hey, do you know the backstory on those? He said, no. And he had no clue that distributor had just tried to get those off their shelves at a loss just to try to get them to move. They're no longer warranty ready. They're beyond any kind of condition from a healthy standpoint. They're known to explode and catch on fire because the dendrite issue within the cell problems. They're a NMC chemistry. And I mean, man, you're more than 3 strikes, you're out. And I said, you need to go over there and get those suckers pulled off of that house before you're a liability on your books. But that's the problem that we see is that we've really got to go through and it's a full ecosystem of education. I mean, it has nothing to do with necessarily I'm a product, Nate's an installer. You guys are on the education side from best practices for sales and operations, but yet we still got software, we still got lenders, we still have multiple different facets of the industry that make sure that we're all cohesive and keeping everything accurate.
And I mean, there is something to be said in terms of the marketing plays that a lot of these manufacturers do. I'm sure you've experienced this, Everett. I won't name any names in Australia, but there was a massive marketing play for this one Austrian manufactured inverter. I don't see much of it in the US, but won't name it. But it was everyone, all customers wanted it. They saw it in all the articles. Every supplier put it to the top of their list. Every EPC wanted it because it got them more deals. It was double the price of everything else, if not triple. We installed a bunch, and then we would install some very economical options, if you will, Chinese manufactured. And we're like, okay, well, let's see what happens. I mean, we didn't say that, but we installed every inverter out there. 2 or 3 years later, we looked at all of our service calls, and these high-end inverters that for about 1.5 years everyone loved just started catching fire. And the economical stuff coming from China, dude, no issues with it, right? And there was a very clear marketing play that they were creating this brand around. And the US isn't really there yet. Customers don't really know brands, and even sales reps don't. But that's certainly going to start coming up. And it's difficult to, as a sales rep, as a homeowner as well, unless you're educated on what things actually do and what they don't do, to distinguish between who has the biggest marketing budget and who doesn't. It's
Yeah, and I'll also state is that I'm getting a little echo back from you, Josh.
Oh,
I'm going on mute, but so I mean, I'll state this is that there's actually a lot of really great products out there: inverters, batteries, solar panels, all the above. But it comes down to making sure that they're installed per electrical specs, per electrical code, for how they originally intended and designed. Making sure that best practices, the electrician is making sure they're accounting for torque specs, for example, is like the number one thing that we see where you have fires and electrical breakdown and burning of conductors all the way through, where they're not literally torquing stuff down properly and meeting proper code. I've got a manufacturer that actually builds a decent product, and I won't call them out, I'll say their name, but they're actually in their training manuals are recommending installation of their product that is not National Electric Code. And because of that, there has been fire extinguisher after fire extinguishers that are being pulled out of people's, basements to put these suckers out. And this is happening literally weekly right now. And so, but all reality is that product has the ability to be installed properly, but it comes down to, Nate said it, go talk to your manufacturers, get educated. Yes, but if your manufacturer, they have a fiduciary requirement to make sure that they're deploying proper education. And so I know at SolarCon, I mean, I've been a big component on battery education. Maybe that's getting down the end of the line. I don't know. I mean, they got to watch me for 2 hours and 45 minutes on main stage once and probably put them to sleep. But man, you've got to really focus on best practice.
I think within the industry, though, I mean, obviously Tesla, Enphase, those are going to be incredibly difficult brands to compete against as far as who you know. But besides that, I would say Franklin and Storz. I'd say those are the two that I see the most that aren't these like household names. So I think you're doing pretty good. That probably wasn't easy.
That's so hard.
But I don't see. Franklin came out of nowhere and just blew up. And then yeah, I'd say Home Grid and Storz is what I kind of see. And then I don't think if it'd be ever, I don't think anyone's going to beat the popularity of Tesla. That's going to be impossible.
They're kind of big.
Yeah.
As far as how popular, it's very easy to not to like say like no, go with this one, it's better. But as far as at least they get the customer thinking about batteries, that brand does, and then you can let them know.
All right, we are running out of time, and I appreciate you guys giving us so much. I have like 1 or 2 more questions. Are you guys okay with a couple more minutes, or are you guys out of here?
Yeah.
Do it.
Just real quick on this one. It was just basically the chemistry of the battery, because believe it or not, a lot of reps don't even know the basics of battery chemistry and what LFP and NMC is. And you're talking about fires, and is that, is it a big difference? Should reps really focus on like which chemistry is better? And NMC, is that more fire, and is LFP just more safer only? Or can you just kind of go over the differences? Because a lot of reps don't really understand it. I think they need to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it really simple. I mean, I can really geek out on this stuff because I literally make this stuff in a lab. But at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is that lithium ion is also known as NMC, NCA, MCM. Those are the chemistry types. So you'll see like Generac and Tesla being some of those examples, LG's previous version of the battery. Um, it's not, so those batteries actually have more density, meaning more power on a smaller footprint. However, the separation between some layers inside that battery, what happens is if that protective layer were to be interrupted or broken in any way, shape, or form, the two other chemicals and materials on the left and right hand side, they actually interact and become volatile. So it actually instantly turns into combustion. And so in the LG Chem example, what happens is that as you start using this product, it starts breaking down over time, just like the tires on your car and the engine, the cylinders on your engine. And what happens is that it starts breaking down to the point of where it creates a void. And in that scenario, it breaks through and then catches on fire. And so you'll see like the Tesla cars, there's been some challenge like in Florida. So vibration and just everyday use. Now, also the toxicity of that combustion is the chemicals and off-gassing is actually very, very dangerous and creates a lot of health concerns in that position as well. Now, if you look at lithium iron phosphate, you literally can puncture it. You can, puncture between those layers. You can shoot it with a 50 cal. You can crush it, all the above. And what happens is, yes, there's energy inside of there, but you're not going to catch on fire. You're not going to have an explosion. And the off gas is actually hydrogen 3, which is, not healthy, but it's not something that's going to kill you when that product starts off gassing. And so lithium iron phosphate has a lot better temperature control on the high end. So you can use it in really, really high temperatures with NMC and lithium ion products. You can get in lower temperatures. But on the high side, which is usually where these things start working really hard and start getting temperature, that's heat. It creates breakdown. And so the longevity of that product is something that I have concern of because these batteries are working really hard, it's creating temperature and creating heat, and they start breaking down. And I don't want that in my home, especially too, is that to put out a lithium ion or NMC or MCM battery technology, I mean, sometimes it takes 3 or 4 days to put these cars out with water. Like I've literally seen Teslas get pushed into lakes and ponds where they're still on fire for 2 or 3 days sitting in a pond.
Are you serious?
Because it's just waiting for these suckers to go out.
Wow.
And so that's where lithium iron phosphate does not have any of those characteristics.
And why, Everett? Why don't they just all use that then?
Yeah.
Why?
Well,
is it? Why? It's
good
older
question.
technology.
Yep. So some of the biggest reasons is that people are worrying about like how many watts I can get in a small footprint. They're all about the efficiency and accounting for how many watts they can really slam in these smaller areas.
CC.
Yeah, exactly. But yet one thing that I'll state is that we've been on a trend with lithium iron phosphate for a really long time. Before it was cool, it was more expensive, less dense, but I didn't blow anybody's house up. That's kind of my meme, right? But what's happening now is like Tesla is now putting LFP in their Model Y, their Model 3, their Model S is next. Rivian is also now doing LFP in their cars.
Are they?
You're going to start to see a lot more of the trends because for one, it's adoptable. They finally had some efficiency factors, and they're really focusing on the safety.
So did the price go down? Was that would you say that was the number was price before? Like how come the Tesla didn't always have an LFP battery?
Yeah, I mean, price was a big factor of it. I mean, like I said, when I first came out with it, I was more expensive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in some words, 30-40% more expensive. And so it was quite large. But now with LFP really becoming the popularity to it, even from like your scooters that drive down the road nowadays, now that price has come down where it's still not as price competitive as lithium ion, and it's still not as dense, but people are really starting to focus on the the ethics side of the business. And we're starting to see a lot more focus. Say, like, you know what, this is what we want to focus on. This is what we want to do. There's 3 more chemistries that I'm excited about. We're working on 2 of them.
Really?
That are even more safe and higher density, but lower cost. And so these are the kind of things that we're really focused on. But safety is always the highest priority. That's where it's weighted. Is it safe? Perfect. Then we'll continue. If it's not safe, it's not even a
Because
thought.
I was hoping LFP would kind of start, like you said, the scooters. Like if a mom knows this scooter's LFP, this one's not. This one can catch on fire. This one can't. It's going to start becoming more and then just bring down the price. So that's good to know. I didn't know. I had heard about the cars, and then I heard that maybe the Powerwall is going to be LFP next. But I didn't know that scooters, and because I think the general public too should have that education. They should have the choice between an LFP scooter and one that's not.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, my mom just got the Tesla Model 3, and it's LFP. I was talking to the sales guy. I was like, I thought it was NMC. He's like, no, it's LFP. And I mean, I thought isn't it LFP heavier though? I thought that's why they didn't have it in the cars, because NMC is a lighter battery. That's not true, or yeah?
It's physically heavier. Yeah.
Heavier,
it
less dense, and
less energy and heavier, but people are finally making the right decisions. So,
all right, another subject I want to
redesign to get it to fit or whatever.
Another subject I want to hit on before I let you guys go. I know you guys mentioned AI earlier, and you're talking about software, but I really want to hit on VPP, virtual power plants, and how that could be coming more and more in the future. And my layman's explanation is that eventually the utilities are going to be paying homeowners for the use of their electricity as opposed to the other way around. Can you go into a little more depth, if Nathan, you know it, or ever? I'm not sure who wants to be better on that topic.
Yeah, we're heavily involved on that topic right now. And so what it really comes down to is that there's DER, demand energy response, and then DR, demand response. There's also the EVSE, which is the energy, electric vehicle aspects that are going to be coming out with bidirectional charging, and then obviously home batteries where you can discharge that battery when the demand is really high.
Yeah.
And so there's already programs where you can get paid for having that battery during peak hours, and where you can get compensated in that area. One thing that I want to make sure I set the expectation for is that your utility company that accesses your battery when they need it doesn't mean it always coincides with when you need it. So right here in Rocky Mountain Power in Utah, we have a program where the utility company will pay you for registering your battery. That sounds great. It makes that barrier of entry really, really low for that customer want to add a battery to their home. But there's already reports of homeowners here to where the utility company drained the battery and then the power went out, and all of a sudden they're just living by candlelight and flashlights because they're like, man, I'm sure glad I got that $1,800 rebate for that battery. Like, was it worth it? And so you really have to look at those aspects all the way through and see what's your target, what's your goal. Is it for backup purposes, or do I want to gamify and take advantage of the utility program? And then maybe it just works out to where the timing says, hey, the power went out and the utility doesn't need it. Well, guess what? The utility usually needs it when the power is about to go out, because that's when the highest demand's happening. That's when they're having infrastructure issues. That's when the freeze storms happen down in Texas. And so you have to really kind of think of the reality of this. So yeah, I saw guys literally making $300 to $500 a day in Texas having a battery, discharging their batteries. No joke.
How does that work on the technical end? How is it connected to the grid? Is there some kind of communication that the grid is somehow telling the battery?
Yeah, so we do a handshake with a central program where, in this case, they actually can pull the strings. And in that case, it tells the battery, say, how much capacity is in that battery. Yes, I have 13 kilowatt hours, and I can give it to you at 5 kilowatts worth of power output. Perfect. They make that call, and they literally can pull that string, and then that battery just says discharge, and it's a slave at that point, and it tells that battery just to start selling.
Is it wireless, or are they installing something that you connect your comms to?
So it's all done over the cloud. So it's all in the air. And there's some protocols where we can talk via the utility line. So like in Europe, I don't know if you realize this, but you can get your power, your internet, and your phone and your TV, and it's all coming on the same wire that's coming through the one wall, which is sitting on different frequencies. And so you literally can just talk through the utility company in that way, but it requires a lot of rules, and ultimately it's very expensive. You got to
I
get
guess
approved
what
by
I was
Homeland
getting
Security.
at, if it was wireless like that, can't the customer just break that connection if they see storms coming
If
and stuff?
if your system's monitored, then the answer to that is no. If you go over there and unplug your Wi-Fi dongle, or you go turn your internet off, then that's how you could actually break that signal.
No,
But
but yeah, so you just change your pass, now the utility can't get into your, how can a customer avoid that once they sign up? Okay, now you're not physically connected in. I just change this setting
it's
here.
it's connected on our side, and so as
Okay.
long as that system's on the internet,
Okay.
we can see it, and so we can control it, or give the utility control. But of course, the customer is opting in during those cases, and they
Because
have the ability to opt out.
these batteries still work without the dongle in them. You just don't have. So if like the customer thinks, oh, the utility is going to steal my power, can't they just disconnect
They
that
could just unplug the
communication?
dongle, and then they would just have to look at the screen if there is
Yeah.
one. They would
Yeah.
just never be able to have remote monitoring. But that'll catch up to them eventually, because I wrote you a check up front to register your
Yeah.
battery,
I
and they
get.
never gave access to it.
Right.
So you
Right.
kind of
I'm
broke the
just, if
rules.
they were really scared, like, I know a storm's coming and I know they're going to steal my power before it goes out, I'm going to
Yeah,
unplug,
yeah,
Is
that's the
is
way
there
you would do it.
Look
is
at
there an
that.
approved list of equipment if a VPP opens and you're like, okay, we're taking applications for this? Do you need an approved list of what batteries are what configuration? Or is it sort of just you got a battery that can go two ways? All right, we're gonna hook you up.
So not all batteries have the ability to, from a security standpoint, go and register and do that handshake between utility and so there's a heavy security aspect of it. The United States grid is the most attacked single point of infrastructure or anything in the entire United States, and so it's heavily secure, or secured in that case. So you do have to have certain protocols and safety measures, from FedRAMP to ADR 2.0. I mean, the list goes on and on. But there's some that use like third-party programs, like in Vermont. You can do a bring your own battery program, and what you have to do is you have to get your manufacturer to qualify with certain safety measures, and then they actually have their own software version that's unique. It's by a third party, and then you have to go do a handshake independently for that. So there's a lot of those in the United States. I mean, I could probably name off 60 if you gave me a minute. Um, so it takes a lot of time and a lot of resources, because you're constantly just connecting software. I'm really a technology company that just so happens to manufacture batteries. Think of it that way. And the battery is just a slave device. I really have to know how to do a ton of stuff, from monitoring to control and recognizing the grid and passing certification and connecting for VPP and DR. So it's not just a lead acid battery pulled out of your old freaking 70.
Does that come
It's a
standard?
lot more than that.
Is that standard with Storz batteries then, just across the board? VPP compatibility, I suppose you would say, because that could be
Yep.
a big factor that a customer needs to keep in mind as well, right? If
Yep.
they're just looking at DIY battery that's going to do the same thing, but then it could be a little sales tool. Hey man, you might have something open up where the you start making cash. You get this battery over here. It might be cheaper, it might be, but it's not going to allow you to do things, in the future. I've
Yep.
never heard that line of conversation or sales before, right?
Yeah.
Is
I
it
mean, those conversations are going to start happening a lot more. I would say probably Q2, Q3 at an industry level, where, we're talking about all this education that needs to happen first, and then we're just going to throw something else on you and teach us something else. But, we're going to do our best to make sure that information gets down to the end of the line and is properly monetized. I mean, it's kind of like the SRECs that have been out there in the RECs, like Illinois and New Jersey and DC, that in Massachusetts, where guys are promised, like, oh yeah, you're going to get your solar system paid back in 1 year. I'm like, no, it's a 10-year payout program. get educated. There's always some level of abuse that can happen, but again, this is where I kind of lean on the software companies. We really need to get the proposal and design tools to be able to model these things. Commercially, it's been available for a long time. Residential, it's time to catch up. So, your software company you're using, hit them up, say, hey, I'm here to help. How can we get this matured? Accuracy is king, and model all these crazy incentives that are around the board.
I agree. Let the sales guys go crazy with their sales strategies, but make the software keep them to stay in lines. That's where you get like a perfect scale factor, right? And then the proposal software these days is sales guys just got a slider. They can just make any settings on the thing that they want. Right?
And you get rid of estimated savings. You said it, Josh, but I hate it because it's like, look, the only thing you know about these different proposals is you know how much each one of them are going to cost you. That you do know. What it's going to save you, literally nobody knows. Who knows? Next year, they could be 10 cents a kilowatt hour. I don't know. And this was the worst decision you ever made. And just nobody knows. All you know is what it's going to cost you.
Estimated.
You have no idea what it's going to save you.
Estimated.
No, this estimated savings is stupid. I don't know. It's the number one thing I don't get about proposal software.
You could have two proposals, the same exact system on each house, same exact everything, same numbers, same production, same cost, but they will have different savings. How is that possible?
They're humans.
So your cost, the savings is, hey, this is how much it costs, and your savings, what will you save in 15 years? You won't know until 15 years from now. You can go back and look at the historical data and see what I would have paid if I didn't have solar. That's the only way you're going to know.
I'll give you another insider information on how crazy this is. So finance providers go to us. We work closely with all the big ones, and they do audits on our proposals with every proposal software. They'll come to us and they'll pick a few that we've submitted to different EPCs and do audits. And one of the things that they require is the estimated savings that were put on the proposal. Every single time we have to go back to them and say, we don't have estimated savings on a proposal. How on earth would we calculate that? And it's like an email chain for a week back and forth every single time they do a scheduled audit with us. It's wild. It's like, you're telling me that that's on your required list, that you want us to generate estimated savings for a customer or human that we have no idea what they're going to be doing in 5-10 years. And they're like, well, yeah, that's that's on our list here. It's like, no, I'm not giving you that. It's stupid. And every single time
we want to know how much you're going to save on year 25. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah. All right. I got one last question. We'll let you the future. We'll let you guys go. Speaking of the future, batteries are becoming synonymous with solar now. It's becoming more and more that batteries are just going to be part of solar systems. And probably as we go in the future, batteries are going to be the bigger component. And it's like, yeah, you want solar panels with your battery. But as we go into the future, doesn't that mean like we don't need the grid anymore? So like my question might be deep or it might be short. Does this battery solar combo mean that there is eventually an end to the grid?
No. I think so. I disagree.
There you go. Two different answers. Nathan, go first.
I think, okay, then if you have to have the grid, how have people been living in off-grid cabins with off-grid? They didn't have to have the grid. There's people who have been doing that for 30 years. One of my friends, he up in, it's like a couple hours away, he has a cabin. It's off-grid. And that guy, his neighbors lived there for like 40 years. He has solar batteries and like a dam that has a water wheel. That's how he gets his power. But I think you can have a system. You can have like a 200% offset system, a bunch of batteries and a generator, and you wouldn't need the grid. How do they build off-grid cabins?
That was my thought.
The grid.
I think, and I think Everett's on my side. I'm going to use a really basic sales process analogy to try to describe why that won't end up the end case. let's say I have 100 leads coming in through an ad campaign a week, and I have 3 sales guys. I could each give them 33 leads in like a dialer software, or I could put the 100 leads into a master dialer software, and the leads are going to get hit harder and faster. You see what I'm saying? Like, because if you're relying on a set segregated system in terms of productivity and efficiency, if I have a home owner over here that's making a bunch of energy, but this homeowner needs more, things always move in more of an efficient timeline, right? I think segregated is the opposite of where it's going. Like when everything is a VPP, when everything is connected, talk about efficiency, talk about productivity, and the decrease in the power that needs to be generated relative to what people are using. I think that's the future for sure. When you're able to neighbors are just constantly back and forth, and that's got to be what's going to happen.
Oh, I guess.
Everything.
Yeah, I guess I was just saying, like, can you? It's like, yes, you can.
Eventually,
like,
one
if somebody
day,
wants
will
that.
there be the end to the grid because of solar and batteries? Like one day, will there
No,
be
there
none?
has to be. The houses have to be connected. There could eventually, I guess, be the end of centralized power plants.
Right.
I guess there could be the end of that, but all of these houses would have to, like, if every house.
All you're doing is creating another centralized power plant. That's what you're forgetting, is the utility company is just a microgrid. So all you're doing is you're breaking it up in decentralized areas, and it's the same exact play. So I look at it, and the fact is, the answer is no. With the solar and battery technology aspect of it, the only way we're going to be account for independence is if there's maturity in the energy generation side on a 24-hour basis where you can account for independence. So until we end up in a situation like Star Trek, we're not there yet. But generation of solar and batteries as a primary and secondary source will not be a globalized solution independently, because the quality of life is going to change. So yes, we have cabins and solutions out there and friends and family, but we're not charging electric vehicles. We're not having 13 iPads plugged in from all the kids and then playing gaming. You're not watching late night TV in your theater in your basement, blasting your audio, making sure that you've got things going. No, you got a generator cranking. You've got a water wheel running for baseload generation. That technology isn't there yet. Plus, there's an economic threshold that the adoption of America is not going to have for those two technologies to account for a 200% offset considerations. In addition to that, too, is that we don't have enough physical real estate to actually generate that 200%. The average rooftop is barely getting to 100% in Massachusetts, let alone California and Utah. So there are limits to the technology to achieve that. With advancement in the technology, then we would actually see that being a potential, but a decentralized situation where you have a little bit more security. So if you have a main generation facility that goes down, like in Texas, where there was 850,000 people that were without a power, I'll back it up. We did a 26,000 acre microgrid in Northern California. When we went through and developed that, we actually set up a centralized solar battery generator solution, which we actually accounted for even a fourth generation with some gravity fed energy solutions that got pretty creative. But when that were to ever fail, because it's in a really high fire zone, we actually set up secondary generation and batteries only to keep the booster pumps running. So that way the fire suppression systems could go through. That was a $370 million project. So can it happen? To Nate's point, 1,000%. But, unless Alibaba shows up on your backyard and makes you the prince of Egypt, and all of a sudden you got a rich uncle, it ain't going to happen. So that's where I'm saying is the technology is the barrier of entry today.
But it's a cool future to think about. Yeah. Very cool future to think about. Unless, like you say, it just becomes centralized again, and we're talking about high power bills now. We forecast what the technology could be in the future in terms of like savings and decentralization, but then capitalism just takes over again, and the power bills are always as ridiculous high as they are today. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, this has been one of my favorite episodes we've done. I really appreciate you guys getting on here. Everett Brewer with Storz Power. If anybody wants to work with you, network with you, reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, best way is just storzpower.com. I mean, hit that up, say you're a homeowner or partner, get in touch with us direct. Of course, hit me up on all the social platforms. Love to hear from you guys, want feedback. We love getting feedback from our partners. It actually helps create future generations of our product. We want to make it, we want the boots on the ground to influence the solution because you guys are the ones that matter. So love to get everybody's feedback, be a part of the future. Man, it takes a village, even if I have to be the village idiot. I mean, we've got to get it done eventually. So I appreciate you guys always focusing on accuracy and proper training and get some of the best people across the entire industry on these podcasts and in person and on main stages. I mean, I can't thank you guys enough. It's got to do more of this. But I'll just kind of give you guys or the people that are listening here. It does no good to sit down and listen. If you don't go and freaking do it, it's like going back to rehab and just repeating the same damn thing over and over again. You're not going to learn anything if you're not go out there and apply the knowledge that these folks are putting time and money and resources to you guys in place for. Freaking do it and be a part of the solution, and then duplicate yourself. Don't be afraid to police somebody up. Don't be afraid to say no. This has to be corrected. I mean, generations, this is affecting beyond our generation. So be multi-generational in thought and process. So
that's beautiful. And Nate, anybody wants to connect with you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just connect with me on Facebook. I think messaging on there would be the easiest way. And yeah, thank you guys. Always bringing in a ton of education. And like Everett said, I think with all these changes, these reps have to take the time to learn this stuff because it is a mind bender at first until it finally clicks and you're like, that makes so much sense. And just really knowing how to look at the situation and how to sell them the right product for their situation and thinking outside of the box with other things like having a cool breaker panel that you can control with your phone. That is so much better than trying to take off $1,000 or something like that. Give them more. Don't just try to drop your price. Give them more value.
Yeah. If a dollar doesn't make sense, they don't spend it. If $5,000 makes sense, they spend it.
Yeah. Everett, really quick, didn't you work with Elon Musk? I heard a rumor that you actually work with him, or you did something kind of project with him, or am I going crazy?
No, we did some work with Solar City with Lyndon and Hayes when he was at the helm over there a while back. Yeah, but Lyndon is Elon's cousin. But
I heard he's coming back. I heard he's coming back to the game.
Yeah, I've heard a rumor. So,
yeah.
But until then, I mean, me and Nate are just going to banter on the internet for the next 24 months. So, I mean, that's what we do. I'll see you online.
Yeah.
Nate.
Let's go.
It's always good, though.
Appreciate you guys. This has been awesome. This has been a Solar Pulse podcast with Josh and Joe, with Everett Brewer and Nathan Skousen. Let's go. Peace.
See you guys.
Have a good one. Peace.